Caley Cantrell is the strategy guru over at VCU Brandcenter. The idea of this podcast is to help you explore all break-in options so you can craft your own break-in scheme. So in this episode, Caley gives us a glimpse into one of the more trusted graduate school options for passionate, aspiring advertisers, VCU Brandcenter. Apart from other portfolio schools, this is an accredited university that after 2 years of rigorous work will leave you with a sound portfolio as well as a master's degree. Nestled in Richmond, Virginia, VCU Brandcenter has a reputation of landing alumni into high-achieving agencies. While they don't rely on Martin Agency due to proximity, it's my observation that Martin sees promise in VCU students. Caley tells us about their strategy track. I believe that strategy is tough to break into within advertising. However, this program will shape you into a junior level strategist that agencies will want to hire. So hear about the details in this episode. Interested in strategy or not, Caley has excellent advice as she has taught plenty of students in her life. To see her resources and to connect with her, head to our Instagram at enteringad. One more time, that's at enteringad. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Caley Cantrell, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yes, super excited to have you on. This is going to be a fun episode. We were talking before, and we have a lot to uncover, and I want to dive right into it. You are the strategy chair at VCU Brandcenter. Awesome stuff. What does that even mean?
The one thing that I want to add to that is I am very fortunate that I get to work with both the strategy students and the creative brand management students. So I get to be, I don't know, sometimes it's the advisor, sometimes it's the wrangler, sometimes it's the cheerleader for those two great tracks. So I'm one of the creative brand managers to get their props too.
What's the difference between those two paths?
The creative brand managers oftentimes will work to go client side, if you will.
Ooh.
Or they will also consider account management opportunities. And then both the strategists and the creative brand managers may go what we often refer to as consultancies. So there's flexibility in both of those tracks.
Interesting. Consultancies meaning advertising agencies or like Accenture?
Consultancies, well, you know what, that's a very good point that you bring up, because I think the classic term when you heard consultancy, it would be an Accenture or a Deloitte or something like that. No, we're more thinking in terms of the really interesting places like Sylvain Labs or Giant Spoon, places like that.
Interesting. Very interesting. So you guys offer a lot of different opportunities for students. You've already covered something that I haven't really talked about and you guys are a master's program, correct? Is that how I should refer to VCU Brandcenter?
Yes, we are a 2-year master's program in advertising and marketing. And we have, it sounds like a radio ad. And we have 5 tracks: strategy and creative brand management, art direction, copywriting, and experience design.
Amazing. And we want to get that out there to our students because our audience are those college students that are looking beyond their graduation, whether that's their dream job or a portfolio or master's program that can get them there. So we're glad to have you on for that. But you've already talked about some interesting things. So VCU sounds like one of the only programs, first off, one of the only master's programs that I've heard of the next level higher education for advertising specifically, one of the first master's programs, but also you said an account-esque track. Which one was that again? That was the creative brand?
The creative brand managers, oftentimes um, they love the idea that they study brand management curriculum, but they really like the vibe of being at an ad agency, because during their time at Brandcenter, they've been working with art directors and copywriters and strategists. So they'll say, hey, I'd really love to do this brand management gig from the agency side versus the client side. So there's some fluidity there.
Nice. I love that. So I'm super interested in Brandcenter. I hear nothing but great things, and Kelly Mertersdorf was our connection for this episode. So I like to also give a little hint to how these connections were made, and just for networking for the students out there, your connections can lead to other connections. So keep that in mind when you're on your job hunt. So I'm super excited about having you on VCU. You are the strategy chair. And I think we could talk about maybe like your background, give you some credibility and how you got to the strategy chair at VCU Brandcenter. So what were some of those like high points in your career? And maybe let's talk about your first job in advertising and how you broke in. And that term broke in is something that we'll talk about as well. But what was that first job?
My first job was as an account person at an agency that doesn't exist anymore. It was one of the last independents. It was an agency called Ted Bates, and they were ultimately purchased by Saatchi and Saatchi. And this is just sort of a sidebar, but so all the senior people at this agency, Ted Bates, had lots and lots of stock. They'd all bought stock through the years. The company had a stock purchase plan. And when they found out, they all went down, all the owners of the stock of the company, they all headed down to Wall Street, because they were going to be told that day that the agency was going to be bought by the Saatchi and Saatchi brothers. And that they were all now instant millionaires. And I happened to be in the elevator going from the ground floor of the skyscraper we worked in to the floor that I worked on. And some of these now millionaires were in the elevator with me. And I just remember being in the corner of the elevator thinking, oh my gosh, these people are now worth so much money.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was still, at that point, I was I was no longer an assistant account executive. I was an account executive. Nice. And I just thought, I'm so far from.
You're on your way up. You're close.
Oh, my word. I was on my way up simply because I was in an elevator.
Yes, that's a good point. That's awesome. So that was called, what was that called again? Before it was bought?
Oh, Ted Bates.
Ted Bates. Okay. Ted Bates bought by Saatchi and Saatchi. Yeah. That's like everybody knows them. They're still around doing great work. Mm-hmm. So how did you get that job?
So in my third year at the University of Virginia, I realized that I wanted to go into advertising, and there was no one in my family, no relatives really, that knew anything about advertising. And I just started reading the trades, and I took the train up to New York City and just pounded the pavement. I sent out resumes to every agency that I could find. And I just called these people and said, I'm making a trip to New York. I'd like to be in advertising. I'm about to graduate from college. And I also was in the program that I was in at UVA. We had a marketing club, and I was the vice president of the marketing club. I invited the HR person from Ted Bates. Mm-hmm. I asked her to come to our marketing club. So this woman flew from New York City to Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'm sure she had to change planes a couple times because Charlottesville didn't really have a big airport. And she came and she spoke to our marketing club. And I think I pulled as much money as I could out of my a bank account to take her out to dinner after she spoke to the club.
Oh, nice.
Right. And then she headed back up to New York. And later, when I was getting close to graduation, I was sending out letters, and I sent one to her.
Hmm.
And that was the only job offer I got, was from that woman at Ted Bates that I had invited to speak at our club.
Ah, that's your break-in story. I love that break-in story. It's a great one.
So yes, and it only takes one job to
Yeah.
get started.
Right, right. And that's such a good story too. And people could do that today. Absolutely, you could do that today. There are clubs today. There are professionals out there that would like to speak at clubs. It's but you did the extra step. You followed up and you took her out to dinner or get them a coffee, whatever it might be today, or virtually. That's such a clean story that can be taken. Everybody can apply that to their current college career.
There's an expression that I use with folks at Brandcenter all the time, and what I tell them is, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have to be prepared, if you're going to ask someone for a job, if you're going to ask someone to speak to your club, if you're, whatever the ask is, you have to be prepared for a no. And so if you can imagine the no, and you can say to yourself, if they say no, I'm still going to survive. I'm still going to find a way to get where I want to be. Then ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get.
So true. So true. And most of the time, they won't even say no. The worst thing you'll get is a no response, realistically, over social media or like LinkedIn. It's a no response. No.
Yeah.
I've never gotten a no. That'd be awesome if I did. That would make me, I would screenshot that. I would laugh. I would show all my buddies that, but that's good stuff. Nobody will say no. If the worst thing, they'll just not respond, but you have nothing to lose.
Correct.
I've reached out to presidents of agencies and, no response most of the time, but the thought of that's okay. Like, still live. So I love that. What other big career moments would you say led you up to being the strategy chair at VCU Brandcenter?
Well, one of the things that led me to all of this stuff is, I'm old, so I have been around for a while, and by virtue of that, when I started in my career, there wasn't anything called strategic planning at an ad agency. There wasn't account planners. That didn't exist when I first started in the business. And there was oftentimes a research department that might be doing, surveys and things like that. But we didn't have a thing called account planning or strategic planning. And it wasn't until I was in San Francisco. I worked in New York for about 8 years, quit my job, put all my stuff in storage. I was a management supervisor at Gray Advertising, and I quit my job and put all my stuff in storage. And I moved to San Francisco without a job, and I didn't know anybody who lived in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
But I moved there, and I had 2 part-time jobs until I got a job at J. Walter Thompson in San Francisco.
Nice.
And that was that time in advertising, and the advertising business was when people like John Steele at Goodby and Jane Newman, who I think was at Chiat, and it was when all the British planners were changing the game at ad agencies. And I had left J. Walter Thompson. I was working at a small agency, and I had joined there was an account planning conference thing that was happening in San Francisco.
Okay.
And I attended it. I paid my way to attend to this conference, and I just fell in love with everything that I was hearing and seeing and doing. And I went back to this small agency and talked to the president of the agency. And I said, I really think I'd like to be an account planner. And he said, well, if you want to do account planning here, that's great, but you still have to do all the account management stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
This was really small.
Yep.
So I said, well, would you pay for me to take these courses in account planning and learning how to do qualitative research and things like that? And they said, no, we're not going to do that.
Oh,
So I got some money. I think I probably maybe borrowed some money from my parents so that I could go take these qualitative research classes. And I started doing, I was making a lot of stuff up as I went along, but I started doing planning and along with the account management. And then I decided that I was going to move back to New York City, and I worked with a recruiter who said, this could be your opportunity to switch roles. Let's see if we can sell you in as an account planner. And that's what happened. I moved back to New York City, and when I got off the plane, I was officially an account planner.
amazing. Amazing. So much perseverance in this story. Moving to San Francisco with no job. You worked 2 side jobs, got hired, and then you kind of created your own path in strategy. You paid for your own classes. What were those classes through? I'm just curious, like when you
Uh,
did that.
the company, I hope I'm not getting this wrong. I will be honest, I'm not sure that they are still in existence.
Sure.
The company was called QRC,
Okay.
and they taught you how to think about how you were going to structure qualitative research. And we had to practice doing focus groups, and they worked with a research company that recruited actual, real live consumers.
Yeah.
And you had to go and lead the groups and get critiqued. And you would sometimes lead with a partner, and sometimes you
Mhm.
would do it on your own. And yeah, I'm sure I really stunk up the joint in the early days, but you got to start somewhere,
That's
and
yeah.
you got to
Well,
jump
'cause
off the cliff.
well, I was just curious because there was no brand center at the time. There was no other like that wasn't a thing.
Right.
When so did you know in the back of your mind once you did that course, when you first broke into strategy, did you know in the back of your head that you wanted to kind of give back and become like on this academic side and become a teacher at all?
Um, so I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't at a place in my life where I could give back. I was still paying my rent.
Sure, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, but no, I never once thought that I was going to teach. Never in a million years. But so I was back in New York, and I was working in New York, and I got a call from a recruiter who said, would you like to move to Richmond, Virginia?
Ah,
And I said, oh my word, no, it's so hot there. Because I had come from and this was so funny because I had come from San Francisco, where I just fully embraced the glorious fog and the beautiful scenery and everything it was to be in Northern California.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was back in New York, and let's be honest, New York in the summer is hot as Hades. So I don't
Mhm.
know why I was being such a snob about Richmond, Virginia, because it's not like moving to the Sahara. But
Sure.
I couldn't conceive of being back in Virginia. And the recruiter said, well, let me put it this way. Would you like to work at the Martin Agency?
Boom.
And I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. Because at that time, when the Martin Agency had always been getting really um, great credit and great awards for their print, but they were starting to really start to do things in broadcast and TV.
Ah.
And I thought, yeah, I'd like to be at the Martin Agency. And I had a phone interview with the then director of strategy, Earl Cox, who truly was one of the best bosses I ever had. And so they flew me down to Richmond, and I spent a day interviewing, and I was on a plane to move down there, within a month.
Wow. You
Yeah,
loved it and you stayed there for a good amount of time.
stayed there for a long time, and the Martin Agency. I was just doing a project for the president, with the president and the Martin Agency recently, and our students were doing it. Actually, I was the lucky person who took the phone call from the president of Martin Agency, Chris Mumford, but actually it was the students, a team of our first year students who did the project that he offered, and really hit it out of the park. But anyway, I am just so blessed that even though I have been at the Brand Center for a long time and I haven't worked at Martin full time in what seems like ages, I'm just so blessed that I know the people there, and I know the caliber of not only the way they do, not only the creative they develop, but just the caliber of their personalities and thoughtfulness. It's a great shop.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they just recently got a lot of recognition from Adweek. I think they were Agency of
Yes.
the Year. So
Yes, I was reading that issue when I suddenly said to myself, "Holy crap, I'm supposed to be on the phone."
oh, it's a good reminder. It's a great reminder.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Richmond, I mean, it's just like this little advertising hub that just produces some of the best work, I think. You got your New York, you got your Chicago, you got your LA, San Francisco, but Richmond really just puts out, I think Arts and Letters too is
Yeah.
a great agency over there.
And don't forget to give props to Austin, Texas. We've got
Oh, yes.
that's a great place too. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the beautiful thing is that advertising, really great advertising, can pop up in all
Anyway,
sorts of places.
yep. I was talking to somebody that was big in Albuquerque. So, yeah, I mean, just where the create, but there are cities that draw in naturally that talent, and having the Brand Center in Richmond, having the Martin Agency, having Arts and Letters. I don't know off the top of my head anything else, but those are heavy hitters in the category. That sure helps.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's great to have them here, not just to hopefully hire some of our students, but also just to participate in the program.
Yeah.
We love, we're suckers for a good guest speaker or
Mhm.
for a good class assignment. So
Yeah.
we're blessed by that.
So there is a pipeline, I'm sure, right, between
Yeah.
you guys, whatever you want to call it. There is a connection between Brand Center and Martin Agency, whether that's guest speaking, whether that's briefs. Is there anything like, do you guys see a tendency for your alumni to go there? Like, do they kind of draw from there naturally just because of proximity, or is that not so much a trend?
Um, well, I'll put it this way. I think that we certainly have people who come to Brand Center who maybe went to VCU or maybe went to UVA,
Mm,
or somehow may or may not be attached to Virginia in general.
okay.
And we also have a whole bunch of people who come to Brand Center from places other than Virginia. And
Sure.
once they've been in Richmond for 2 years, they've grown to like it. But I would say it's true of all of Brand Center, but I definitely know it's true for me. Um, we don't take the Martin Agency or Arts and Letters for granted. We
Hmm.
don't assume that they're going to hire I'll take a half a pound of Brand Center students. We don't assume that.
Yeah.
The day we start assuming stuff like that means we're probably not trying as hard.
Right.
So
You're not leaning on them. They're not a crutch for you guys in any way, shape, or form. You guys
no,
are still high performing. And let's be honest, Martin Agency is one of the best agencies out there, and they want some of the best people out there. So you got to keep up with those standards. If anything, it's like a giant looking over you, right? Like it's like a good, healthy pressure, like to be reminded that there are powerhouse agencies that produce some great creative work. So you want to get your students there. So that's great.
yeah. Now I'm scared of the giant. You just
Yeah. The big, scary giant.
it's peering over me, but yes.
Well, that's awesome. How did you get into VCU Ad Center? I think is that what it was called
It was called
before?
the Ad Center, and I tell this story. There's a Ashley Summerdahl who is I believe her title now is associate director. I hope I didn't screw that up at the Brand Center, but she was an Ad Center grad, and she worked at the Martin Agency for a few years. And then when I believe this is the chronology, and I apologize to Ashley if I'm screwing it up, but she went over from the Martin Agency to work at the Brand Center when Rick Boyko joined the Brand Center as the director.
Okay.
And I was still working at the Martin Agency, and she called the Martin Agency. She called me one day and said, "Hey, would you like to teach a class on branding at the Brand Center?" And I mean, I've told this story before, but I said, "Oh, sure, that sounds like fun." And I hung up the phone, and then I thought, "Oh, dear Lord, I don't know anything about teaching." And I don't, and while I understand branding, I don't know if I know how to teach it. So I went ahead and did the class, and I had some really bizarre assignments. I came up with some real doozies, but I must have done an okay job because, and I'm saying okay, I have no idea if I did a great job or not a good job, but they asked me to come in for another semester.
That's a good indicator that you did
Yeah,
okay.
so I thought that was a good sign. And then the gentleman who was running the account planning track, he decided to move to, I think it was California. He decided to move.
Okay.
And so they offered me the job to run the track. And I thought to myself, oh, I think there's so much more that I want to do in the advertising business and all this stuff. So I told them no. And then I heard through the grapevine that they were interviewing for the position. And if my husband was on this broadcast, he would tell the story the same way probably. But I remember I went home and I said to my husband, "Can you believe they're interviewing people for my job?"
Oh.
And he said, "Well, if it's your job, you better go get it." And so I called Rick Boyko and I said, yes, I'm interested in the job. And I formally interviewed, and I did it. And I took the job, and here I am talking to you.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So you didn't want it, right? And then when they were interviewing other people, it kind of made public. You heard it's kind of like jealous a little bit. You're like, wait a minute. It made you realize I kind of want that role, and you went and got it. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And there's a theme here, which is I didn't exactly plan my career.
Yes, and a little bit of irony there too.
I've been blessed by opportunities that I seized, or someone smarter than me told me to seize.
Okay.
And here I am.
Now I try to do the exact opposite. I try to plan every single minute of my life, and I go crazy. And sometimes I just I just have to let things go naturally. My dad's like that. He's just like, everything will happen for a reason. It'll all work out. But on the other hand, I'm just like, I want to plan everything. I need to be in control of my own future no matter what. So I got to probably just relax a little bit. So that's inspiring. But okay. so you got into the track here. So let's talk about VCU and the strategy and wherever you want to take it from here, because I want to break down for students now. Uh, you have a very credible history, so we believe you everything you're going to say. Uh, I want to talk about VCU and what makes it special, why you've been working there for a good amount of time now. What keeps you there? What do you love about it? The floor is yours to talk about it because I'm curious. So, like, what made you stay for so long?
So I think one of the things that gets me the most excited and the happiest thing about my job is when you see a team. You see maybe whether it's a team of whether it's two strategists working on something or whether it's a team representing all the different disciplines at the brand center, and you see them present something and you are thrilled for them, you're jealous of what they did,
Hmm.
and you know that they know that it feels so good and they are so proud to be sharing this.
Yeah,
It's it's a home run, it's a Hail Mary, it's an Oscar, it's every good thing. It's just a wonderful feeling to see people um, proud of themselves doing great work. And that's why I'm still there.
I love that, and I actually have aspirations to do similar in my later in my career. Is just to see that similar experience over and over again in an academic setting. So I aspire to be like you one day, and that's a very that I just love that. And I'm sure you see it often, that those presentations, all the hard work pay off for those students, and you can physically see it, like when they do those presentations, those end of the year or end of the semester, whatever it might be. You see that a good amount of times. I'm sure you've seen it over and over again. That's got to be great itself.
Yeah. And, you also, I mean, let's be honest, you see great stuff and you see stuff that's not so great. But as long as you learn from the great stuff, you learn from the not so great, you learn that, wow, maybe we stopped a little bit short. Maybe we
Hmm.
should have pushed a little bit farther, or maybe the strategy and the work didn't sync up as well. But I think the other thing that's the responsibility of the faculty is to be able to, with clarity, say, okay, this is the gap between what you guys did and where it could go.
Hmm.
And let me give you some critique. So if you want to go back, you can get it. You can get that extra mile done.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Oh, I love that. And that's what you should be doing, and that's what they should love that. That's what they should be expecting. Um, Can I go into some details and ask you maybe some prodding questions about Brand Center and what makes somebody why should somebody go there? Who is meant to go to Brand Center? Can we talk about like the demographic of people that go there in general and their motivations and what makes a great student?
This is one of those instances where it's good to have competition, and brand center is one option.
Yes.
um, so for example, one of the things that a place like brand center offers, or the PhD program at a place like UT Austin, is whether having a graduate degree is important to you. That is an option. There are schools that you can look at. I think
Ah.
the Cy Newhouse School, I think it's Syracuse. That's
Yep.
another place. Um, and if you're a designer, you might want to go to RISD. So again, sorry, I digress. But first of all, one of the things is, do you want it to be a graduate program or not?
Right.
Another thing to consider, obviously, is cost.
Hmm.
And there's two kinds of costs. There's the cost of the program, and then there's the cost of your time. And is there a program that you can do in the evenings, or is there a program, is this something that you're going to have to potentially quit a job to do? So I think there are options, and people need to, they need to create what is my wish list, and
Yeah.
then look at the programs and say, which of these tend to line up with my wish list.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, so grad school can get you what if you're looking to go maybe into academics, or I mean, what are some of the pros of having that master's? It's a master's degree,
Um,
right?
well, I sort of, I think there, for many people, the idea of, hey, I just worked I've just worked my fingers to the bone, my brain to the bone. I have a master's degree to show for it. And
Hmm.
one of the things that Brand Center does very well, and I believe there are other programs that do this as well. I just don't know all the details. So I'm not waffling. I'm not smart about all the details. But we work really hard. Ashley Summerdahl and her team work on a recruiter session. So we work very hard to um, create opportunities for our students to showcase their portfolios.
Hmm.
So the industry gets to see their portfolios. So
Right.
that's something that people should look at is, am I going to leave with a degree? Am I going to leave with a portfolio? Are there networking opportunities within the program? Those are all important things to consider, regardless of what program you're looking at.
Right. Right. So VCU will give you the master's. It'll give you, does it get you, do you guys specialize in portfolio development? Like you'll get that if you're,
Um, every student at Brand Center will they're required to develop a portfolio
okay.
regardless of what track. So
Okay.
you probably
Great.
know that art directors and copywriters
Gotcha.
since time immemorial have had portfolios.
Gotcha.
All the tracks at Brand Center have portfolios. I imagine that is true of some of the other programs. I certainly know Circus has portfolios.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that's something that if people are thinking about going into a program, that might be something they want to look into and determine, hey, we can check the box. You're going to leave with a portfolio.
And I think there's some weight to a master's degree. You tell your parents you got a master's degree. It's just one of those things that they'll be instantly proud of. They might not understand a portfolio school where the money's going. It's just one of those. It's just it just translates well. I think everybody can understand and get behind what a master's degree is. And you're getting the portfolio. I think everybody VCU, if you don't know, you're going to get the brand name as well. It's a big time organization that the industry knows and appreciates. But no, you're getting all these benefits going to the VCU. I think one of the big things you need to address is 2 years, I think. And so is Creative Circus. So is that an internship involved with those 2 years? Like why, is it, and am I right on 2 years or is that just something I heard?
So Brand Center, yeah, it is. It is 2 years, and we have a majority of our students participate in internship programs, and how that works is, first of all, if you've been doing a lot of these podcasts, I believe it's through the 4As, but they're the MAPE scholarships and the MAPE internships. So that is something people can take advantage of. And then we have an internship posting board,
Okay.
and it's usually divided by, these are the people that are looking for art direction. These are the people that are looking for copywriting. And these internships are posted, and students can apply to as many of them as they want.
Okay.
And usually how they get their, summer internship.
Is this specific and unique just to your VCU Brandcenter students that you guys are networking on their behalf? Is that, or is this open to the public?
This internship posting board is
Internal.
specific to Brandcenter.
Okay, that's good. That's what people want. They want that internal. They're buying into that, to the network as well, and they expect at least opportunities presented to them. Not guaranteed, but at least you're presenting them. So
Right.
that's great.
And we, students often hear about internships that we don't know about, or
Sure.
sometimes they will decide that, you know what, between my first and second year of Brandcenter, I really want to work on a side hustle, or I'd like to travel. So
Yep.
I can say that I think a majority of our students do an internship, but it's not always the case.
Yeah. I was just listening to an episode I posted today actually with Leslie B is the director of talent at Goodby.
Yeah.
And she was saying, if you can afford portfolio school and you have the time, that's a very personal decision, or grad school or VCU. If you can afford it, it's so fun. She was saying, and like she's jealous, like of like how much fun you guys have, the creativity that the students have. Go for it, and like there is no guarantee that recruiters will look at you more heavily, although that tends to be the case, but it's not a one for one. Like you're not going to be guaranteed a job at a great agency, but if you put in the work and you have the resources and you truly care about it and you put in the work, you will see results. That's what I've heard from recruiters at Goodby, at Wyden, at all these other recruiters kind of agreed on that.
I think that maybe in another life I'll come back as a recruiter, because I think these folks are, I would love to come back as a recruiter, because I think they are so good at assessing chemistry and how this prospect, their skill set, but also the chemistry and how to bring, here's a new person we're bringing into the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that they're so good at that and so smart, and they
Yeah.
have great gut instincts for that.
I kind of want to do that.
Yeah, and I think they're absolutely right. Is if you can afford the cost, if you can afford the time
Mm-hmm.
that you have to devote, yeah, I think there are a lot of great programs out there, and you should take a look. But I'm not naive. Sometimes the stars have to align on these
Yeah.
things to make it happen.
Yep. Yep. And that's why, I'm happy to have you on to talk about Brandcenter and talk. You even mentioned all the opportunities. So that's very nice of you and very holistic. And I appreciate that. Any advice that you have now, because you've seen probably a good amount of students graduate from Brandcenter. What advice do you have for students to get a job in advertising after Brandcenter or even after college? Because that's an opportunity, you could go out and try to break into the industry post college. Like if you could do it, if you work hard and you're creative enough and you have the hustle and the drive, go out there and try things out. And then if not, things aren't working in a couple months, maybe consider a higher education. But what advice do you have for students out there that are looking for jobs at all areas of their career?
Well, so I'm going to throw out a couple things. So I think we talked a little bit, and if we didn't, I'm jumping ahead. But if there's somebody out there who has an interesting side hustle, maybe they are a strategist who writes slam poetry, writes and performs slam poetry, or maybe they are a copywriter who's got a secret screenplay in their back pocket, or things like that. So I think number one, think holistically about what you bring to the table, because I think sometimes our secret side hustles can become something pretty cool. And I feel like I'm seeing that in the industry right now. So I would bring that up. I think one of the challenges is if you decide, I'm going to see if I can get a gig in advertising without going to a portfolio school or without going to a place like Brandcenter. I say go for it and realize that you may be starting at a lower salary because you're coming to the table with, you don't have a degree or you don't have prior experience.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting at a lower salary.
Lower level.
Right, a lower level, lower salary, but you
Mm-hmm.
got a gig.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can say, I'm going to go to a portfolio school or I'm going to get a master's because that's important to me. I think it will give me a leg up. You get a job in the business, it's at a higher level, but you got some education debt.
Right.
So that's kind of the trade-off. You start out at a low level and you're getting paid at a low level, or you start out at a higher level, but you got some debt.
I think there might be even some domino effect, right? If you start at a lower level, lower pay, and maybe a lesser quality organization, agency, client, whatever you want to, wherever you're at, it might be lower level or below your satisfaction, and that could probably compound for the rest of your career. I don't know long term. I don't know how the future. I don't have a crystal ball, but starting at that foundation might be pretty important, and it's something worth consideration of how you want your career to look going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that I don't know if a lower level, I'm not necessarily saying that you're starting at a lower level at a lesser quality place.
No, I'm saying that. No, you weren't saying that. I was saying that.
Yeah.
I'll take that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, you know, when we started this and you were you were talking about my career,
Mm-hmm.
and if people listen to the opening of this thing, they might say, "Wow, this lady, she was kind of a hot mess. She got one job offer out of college. She moved to New York. She put all her stuff in storage and moved to San Francisco, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing anybody." I clearly am not the queen of having a plan. I kind of went with my gut. So, and I think in this day and age, also with, you know, we have to think about the power of social media that can get somebody up on the leaderboard pretty quickly.
Oh yeah.
Um, you know, there is no one way to skin the cat.
Love it. I agree. I agree. Awesome. Anything else you want to talk about Brandcenter that I didn't ask about that you have written down, or any advice that you want to cover that
Oh
I
my
haven't asked about?
gosh, was I supposed to write stuff down?
No, but you did mention how you don't like how we call it breaking into the industry. I remember
Oh,
that. And I know that the whole podcast is called Breaking and Entering. So you probably don't like the name of the podcast. So maybe explain that.
no, I'll leave that alone. So here's a here you know, I think before we started, before you said you were going to hit record, you asked me to like think of things for inspiration.
Yeah.
So these are some things that I'm going to throw out, and if in happenstance any of my former students or current students listen to this, they're probably all shaking their heads. First of all, I think whether somebody reads it in the old-fashioned folded up newspaper that's thrown on your front doorstep, or whether you're reading it online, if you want to get into business in general, but if you want to get into advertising and marketing, please read a credible newspaper every day, because within that newspaper are articles about something that's happening that starts a ripple effect that could absolutely lead to your client needing to make a major decision about their budgets, or, you know, think about all the brands and all the products that were stuck on those container ships in the middle of the Suez Canal.
Yep.
You know, there's a ripple effect to this, or the butterfly effect, whatever. So
Sure.
try to get, read the newspaper, ask somebody to give you a subscription to the Harvard Business Review and read that, look at Fast Company, stuff like that, because advertising is an incredibly fun and creative industry to be in, but we are in service of
Yep.
businesses building brands, and we are doing that to connect with culture and read the newspaper or do something to find out what's happening in culture.
Yeah.
So that's that sermon. Um, if you have a spare minute or two in your day, go to a bookstore and look at children's books,
Ooh,
because
why?
sometimes some of the best art direction and art in general is in children's picture books. So just browse, go to the bookstore and go to a section that you've never been to before and just sit on the floor and look at the books. And that's whether you're a strategist or a designer. I think that's a great thing to do.
Smart.
Obviously, podcasts are a great resource.
Love them.
And if you feel like going back into the movie theaters, go watch movies, because sometimes the techniques in movie production, you will see them a couple months later in TV commercials. So look at the techniques that are happening in the world. Whether you're a strategist or an art director, keep your eyes open. Really, really super important.
What a fun challenge, just to consume all parts of the news and what's going on in the world and culture. It's just a great task for any strategist, art director, copywriter. I just love that creative challenge. So that's all I got, Caley. This has been great. Can people reach out to you if they are interested in you or the brand center? Is that okay? Is there somebody else they should reach out to? How does that work?
Well, I think you can find me on LinkedIn, and
Okay.
I think you, in my contact info on LinkedIn is my email address. You can try that, or you can just send me a message. I'm pretty good at responding.
Great. Then everybody, you heard it here. Tell Caley Breaking and Entering sent you, and she might answer. And the worst thing she might do is not answer. We talked about that before, but she'll answer.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Caley, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. Great advice. VCU Brandcenter, strategy, everything we love on this podcast. So thank you again.
And hats off to Kelly for recommending me.
Yep. Kelly Murdersdorf, her episode. Go listen. Well, thank you, Caley.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this week's guest. Make sure you go and connect with them on LinkedIn. Tell them that Breaking and Entering sent you. Now, thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio technician, and Buchun Zhang, our creative director, as well as the student team from the Midnight Oil Agency at the University of Illinois. Can't do it without you all. Thank you very much. We will see you all next week with another amazing guest.